To start us in the afternoon, I'm delighted to present Colonel Fran O'Connor. Dr. O'Connor and I go way back. We were at West Point together, classmates in the class of 1981, and I was really pleased when they accepted the invitation to come here. Dr. O'Connor is a family medicine physician with a subspecialty training in sports medicine. He's done numerous initiatives, writing, research in sports medicine. He's been the past president of the American Medical Society for Sports Medicine. He started a sports medicine fellowship for the military that's been going strong now for 20 years, I think. That's been great. He's currently the chair of the Department of Military and Emergency Medicine, which at the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, Maryland. And he's also the medical director for CHAMP, which is the Consortium for Health and Military Performance, which he's going to speak about. That's based at the Uniformed Services University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. O'Connor.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. I've truly enjoyed the program this morning. It's been phenomenal, and I hope to give a little twist on what the military is now doing about fitness and performance and exercise as medicine. So I've titled this here, The Changing Paradigm, because we really are moving the ball in fitness, and I'll try to elaborate on that for you. No disclosures at this point, other than I am a member of the Department of Defense, but these are all my own opinions. Make that very clear. I want to start with this quote from Rudyard Kipling. This was a preface to one of his books. Nations have passed away and left no trace, and history gives the naked cause of it one single, simple reason in all cases. They fell because their people were not fit. And I think, hopefully this is not pathetic for our country, but I think we all know after this morning's session that we have a problem in the United States. We have a major problem. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges that face the Department of Defense in terms of injury and fitness, how it impacts us in particular. I'm then going to shift to construct changes, recognizing the fitness problem, the obesity problem, how we are changing and morphing what we do in the United States military as a big construct. And then I'm finally going to wrap up with a very concrete example, special operations, in terms of how we're integrating this new paradigm. So let's take a look at some of the challenges. We are the biggest team in the United States, flat out. The United States Army alone has 1 million men and women under arms in active duty in the reserves, National Guard. 1 million. So we argue we have the largest team in the United States. To keep this team healthy, we have to combat injuries, and you see injuries is a huge deal for us in the military because it affects our readiness. It is our biggest medical threat to readiness. Now, this was published in 2013 in a journal. Take a look at military injuries. You see here over 2 million medical encounters annually in the military. This is why we want orthopedic surgeons like Dr. Schaefer in uniform, who served for 30 years. You can see the numbers here, 600,000 individual service members a year affected by injury. It's our number one disabling condition, number one reason that people are exited out of the military early. In terms of training, bringing people from Baltimore down to a Fort Jackson, South Carolina to train, for male recruits, about 6 to 12 or 100 male recruits per month that are injured. That's double to triple for female recruits. When we take a look at things, as you see here in this picture, like NAVSPEC War, SEAL training, which is extremely intense, we're talking about 30 per 100 per month. So musculoskeletal medicine fitness is absolutely paradigm. All sorts of injury data has been collected, trying to figure out and tease out what are the risk factors. But by far and away, there are two things that jump out over and over and over again. And that's a low level of physical fitness entering the military, and number two, a previous injury history that hasn't been rehabilitated properly. Those are the two things overwhelmingly that we see over and over again. Obviously, with this injury paradigm, prevention is huge in the military. We focus on this. We've been working on it for years and years and years. This one publication, 2017, as you see here, and was analyzing 6 different injury prevention strategies. And by far and away, the 2 that have jumped out, again, to try to reduce this injury burden is reducing the volume. We have people running less to accommodate for a fewer number of injuries. And number 2, leadership. Leadership has to be involved in implementing good strategies for injury prevention and adhering to things to make sure people don't do stupid things, or run too much. We're also spending an awful lot of time, as women are now engaging in more and more combat roles and trying to understand any gender or sex-specific differences in injury patterns, trying to articulate that and identify patterns that might succeed. But for us, it's not just about injuries. It's not just about injuries. Okay, we reflect the nation. Now, 1% of the nation serves. 1% on the active duty pool. 1%. But we take a look at the country, what's going on, and I think we heard some of these themes earlier today. 1 in 5 adults is sedentary. They are totally inactive. 50% meet the aerobic guidelines, which are very moderate. We talked about it earlier today. 120, 150 minutes of just getting out there to do something 3 times a week, or for minimal. When we take a look at combining strength training with aerobic training, 1 in 5 meet the national guidelines. 1 in 5. And as was pointed out earlier today, we know sedentary behavior, strong association with increase in mortality. This is one study published in Lancet 2012. 9% of premature mortality can be attributed to this lack of physical fitness and increase in sedentary behavior. Because fitness, or the lack thereof, is a problem in the country and Baltimore and Virginia, where I am, it's a problem for the military, because Baltimore and Virginia certainly represent the pool where we draw the resource to create the Army that provides national security. So we take a look at this. This is Wall Street Journal, 2014. 71% of the 34 million you see here, 17 to 24, that's the population, would not qualify for military service. 71%. Most of that's related to health, physical appearance, and educational background. This was according to the Pentagon, and again published in 2014. Are today's warfighters less fit? I think most of us know the problem begins in elementary school. Certainly, I know I live in Fairfax, Virginia, Fairfax County, very wealthy county in the country. Kids are done with gym class after their freshman year in high school. Kids are not fit. They are not exercising. But are they less fit than what they were 20 years ago? This was published, Journal of Strength and Conditioning, 2017. Interestingly enough, VO2 maxes with the men and women entering the military are comparable. However, the BMIs are higher, and when you take a look at an outcome, like a 1-mile run or a 2-mile run score, people are slower. So even though they have that VO2 max, there are other factors that contribute to poorer performance, aerobic performance, and of course this translates into function when they're going to go on and become warfighters. This was interesting. December 2017, Navy Times. Navy granted nearly 50,000 sailors amnesty so they could stay in the Navy. If you fail 2 PT tests, physical fitness tests, they're given twice a year, in the Navy, you can be medically boarded out and sent home. 2. Because the Navy needs to keep people in ranks, just like the Army and the Air Force, they granted amnesty to 50,000 sailors. 50,000. That's pretty dramatic. It's not just fitness, it's not just injuries. We also face the same problem that we're talking about here today, which is obesity. We've got this problem. You take a look here. Military Times, December 2016, pretty easy to see. The curve is going in the wrong direction. Got the Army leading the way here, 2015. Nearly 10% are overweight or obese. One thing you will note on this curve is the one standard that has not changed, the Marine Corps. Marine Corps will not tolerate it, and they will move people out. Marine Corps consistently less than 2% for overweight or obese. But the trends go in the wrong direction for the other services. And it's nothing more than a reflection of what's going on in the United States. Frightening trend that I think we all need to be aware of, because it's a dangerous world, as we know. In World War I, with conscripts, 1/3 of those people who were conscripted to serve were not fit for service, 1/3. So 2/3 could go on and serve overseas. In World War II, with the first 2 million men and women who were conscripted and volunteered to serve in World War II, the first 2 million, 1 million were found unfit for service. Now that's just not fitness and being overweight. There's TB, there's illness, etc. But 1/5 or 1/2 were unable to serve. This was published again, Wall Street Journal 2014. This was a prediction by Major General Alan Bachelet, as you see here, who worked at U.S. Army Recruiting Command. Here, we think by 2020 it could be as high as 50%, which means that only 2 in 10 would qualify to join the Army. 8 in 10 high schoolers, 8 in 10 are unfit for military service. That's a problem. That's a national security problem that the Pentagon is very concerned about. But it's something we need to be partnering with communities because this is very troubling. John F. Kennedy, our growing softness, our increasing lack of physical fitness is a menace to our security. That was in the 60s. And of course, John F. Kennedy started the President's Council on Physical Fitness, and many of you might remember when you were at school taking the President's Council test. Okay, but this is a sad commentary on where we are headed. So in summary, with this first part of my lecture here, injuries, decreasing fitness, and obesity, they are compromising our pool, our national pool for service. It's a major problem, and it's a problem because every single warfighter that we take into the military now becomes a critical resource moving forward that we have to preserve to make sure is not injured, because we need them, because we don't have the pool to draw from anymore. So with that being said, in the military, there have been some significant paradigm shifts now in approaching fitness. The big buzzword in the United States military, particularly in the Army, is human performance optimization. That's the buzzword. Now, as most of us know, since 9/11, the country's been involved and engaged in war. We still have troops in Afghanistan. Doctors, my colleagues, are deployed over there right now. It's been a long time, 17 years. Okay? General Abizaid, as you see here, was the CENTCOM commander at that time, the peak of the war in 05 and 06, coined the term the long war. This war, unfortunately, may be generational, high operational tempo. We're going to need these soldiers, which is a small pool, over and over again, so we need to keep them fit. So this translated back to Colonel John Collins, 1967, who's one of the fathers of special operations, who coined this term, humans are more important than hardware. Our most important resource is the human. It's not a tank, not a jet, not a missile. Now we need to protect these humans the best we can, so human performance optimization becomes critical. This is Mark Milley. He's the Chief of Staff of the Army right now. And you can see here, readiness. Fight and win in ground combat is and will remain the United States Army's #1 priority. It's readiness, readiness, readiness. And that translates into fitness and how do we keep these young men and women fit? We had a conference at Uniformed Services University. Shave talked about CHAMP, which I am the medical director for. We held this in 2006 to try to catch up with this concept of human performance optimization as other militaries across the world were starting to endorse this concept of HPO. At that time, we identified a think tank. We needed to define HPO, what are metrics, so that we can assess outcomes, and eventually translate basic science and technologies into tools to help keep our soldiers in the fight and to keep them fit. But we were definitely going to move forward at that point in time 10 years ago with a program in HPO. So we turned to a think tank in Washington at that point with the Cytor Corporation, looking at what is performance, what is human performance, and focusing on this, what is performance, why do we act the way we do, okay, what impacts performance, how can we impact that performance to achieve a better outcome, and finally, can we influence different components of performance? So we turned to a leading thinker who was in the Pentagon, actually devised a lot of the strategy into the Persian Gulf War, John Boyd. John Boyd was a thinker in Vietnam. He was a pilot, and he developed the concept that many military strategically oriented people are familiar with called the OODA loop. Okay? The OODA loop was designed for fighter pilots initially, and that is observe, see the situation, orient yourself with training, make a decision, turn left, turn right, and then act and then move that jet. And the key thing about the OODA loop with jets in particular, these fighter pilots, is that agility is always favored over power. But this construct of the OODA loop became our construct for human performance optimization. with a warfighter, being that more important than hardware. So again, the ability to observe the situation and how can we amplify that? Night vision goggles, things like that. Orientation, whether that's better training such that they can take in the surroundings so they can make decisions. Make a decision faster. Cognitive enhancement. Can we improve memory? Can we improve the ability to make decisions more quickly? And then finally, you have to act. If I have 80 pounds on my back and I have to climb a wall to act, to make a decision, to kick down a door, I have to have physical fitness to be able to do that. So this becomes our construct with optimizing the OODA loop, trying to make my OODA loop faster than the enemy's OODA loop so that obviously we can succeed on the battlefield. So we take the intrinsic ability of the warfighter, we're doing anything to enhance it, okay, and any negative stressors to try to mitigate those to optimize the OODA loop, and this is our principal construct right now. Now, key distinction should jump out at you here, and that is our outcome is performance. Okay, it's very concrete. I mean, they have to win, have to be more lethal on the battlefield. It's that simple. So it's different from health, and it has different outcomes. If you take a look here, optimized performance, again, sustains lethality and mission readiness. It's about the mission and preserving that warfighter so that he or she comes home. But it's very well defined, 4 tasks, 4 task enhancement, unit community, small units working together, and the whole orientation is human performance, and you'll see how this comes in to where I'm going. So in summarizing for you this concept of human performance optimization that's driving our paradigm right now, it comes down to the outcome that you see in this box below. Optimizing HPO is defined as the process of applying knowledge, skills, and technologies to improve and preserve the capabilities of DoD to execute a task, to do something. They need to win on the battlefield, not necessarily kick a field goal, etc. For the Ravens. And we have a paradigm here that it's not just physical, but it's cognitive and it's socio-emotional, that it involves all these domains, and I'm going to get into that here shortly. There are different types, and you're going to see this is very similar for those of you involved in sports medicine. We have enhancement, which is pre-deployment. We're getting ready to go to the game. What are the technologies to prepare a soldier? Sustainment. When you have someone over in theater, Iraq or Afghanistan, whatever it may be, how do we keep them fit in this environment where they're not sleeping? And then finally, when they return, how do we restore them? Very similar to an athlete engaging in competition, concept of periodization that you might be familiar with. Many tools that we are leveraging through technologies today, as well as through research, maybe drugs, maybe a nutraceutical, a supplement, techniques, it may be a new strength training technique, it may be yoga to preserve flexibility, restoration, maybe a machine, as I mentioned before, something like night vision goggles to assist, and it may be genetic. This may be where we're going, but anything to give our warfighter an advantage with their OODA loop. And all this comes together and is integrated, again, to try to help this warfighter succeed. The next construct change is total force fitness. Okay, total force fitness. Now, in 2009, we were approached by Admiral Mullen, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff down at the Pentagon, that, boy, something had to change with fitness. All sorts of PTSD, TBI, broken soldiers, a lot of soldiers returning to theater on effective or on PTSD meds, a real tough time keeping us in the fight. He said, we've got to do something different. So he challenged the university and a lot of thinkers to think about this concept of total force fitness. And we did. We brought a group together of thinkers to Uniformed Services University across the DoD enterprise. We actually constructed a paradigm of total force fitness, and it translated into a publication at CJCSI, or Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Instruction, that permeates down to all services that drives doctrine, which is important. It translates into regulation, and that's what commanders follow, guidance. What is that? Well, it recognized HPO, as I just talked about, this concept of human performance optimization. That's an end state. I've already described that for you in terms of the ability to execute an essential task. TFF, or total force fitness, however, was a recognition that it's not just about improving sit-ups, push-ups, and increasing your 2-mile run, that it's a holistic approach. It's integrative. It's got to be completely different, involving more domains. So enabling each warfighter community, okay, to focus on these domains so that it can translate into completion of tasks. this is the paradigm on where we are right now and what you see commanders now focusing on, not just improving 2-mile run scores, but you see a concentration here on a recognition of mind-body being integrated together, but that mind-body is functioning around a family, an organization, and a community. And we're trying to focus on all these domains so that that warfighter can succeed on the battlefield. Okay, our total force fitness model recognizes, in addition to that holistic approach, 8 different domains. And with these 8 different domains come metrics that we are now trying to follow. And you see the domains: social, physical, environmental, medical, spiritual, nutritional, psychological, and behavioral. This is a construct. It's a construct we're now moving with. But with this construct, again, I think the key thing is trying to create metrics to follow as we implement programs to try to make a difference in our warfighters. Again, to preserve those individuals who are so valuable as resources to execute those essential tasks. The other concept, in addition to HPO, total force fitness, is the concept that the military talks about as left of the bang. Okay, the bang being the injury. Maybe an injury could be a stress fracture at Fort Jackson, or someone who sprains an ankle when they're running trying to kick down a door in Afghanistan. So here you see in the middle the bang, okay, which is the response. To the right of the bang is injured or incapacitated. We're trying to avoid having warfighters who are unable to deploy or execute. And on the left side, you see healthy, adaptive, but we're trying to move soldiers, warfighters, as far as possible to the left of the bang, from healthy and adaptive to enhanced capabilities. So they are being optimized, prehabilitated to execute their tasks before they go and serve overseas. So this optimization is far left of the bang as possible. You see here right of the bang efforts. When military people talk about that, they're taking people who are injured, whether they're returned from a deployment or they've had an injury during a training, and we try to move those right to the other side, to healthy adaptive. And again, as I just mentioned, left of the bang or boom, some people talk about, anything to enhance those performance core tasks. So another paradigm shift or thought that you'll hear or you'll read about if you read some of the military literature. The other mistake that the military has made, and I think a lot of communities make, is that these efforts in improving physical fitness in a place like Baltimore or Fort Jackson, it can't be top down. It can't be where you're telling people what to do. It's got to be bottom up. And that's something that we've learned. Okay, so for example, in terms of building different skills in a Marine Corps individual or an Air Force special operator, they have unique skills, unique communities, different families, different service cultures. They need to build their own construct around those 8 paradigms and how it's going to fit together. Okay, here we have brought, this is some defenders. These are some Marines that we brought forward in trying to build their team, their unit, to build their construct on human performance optimization and total force fitness, which was going to work with their community. So with these small groups, we're working on defining what is HPO for them, how can we make this work on their community. But again, it really illustrates the point, most importantly, that these are bottom up from the service culture. Okay, the other thing that we're doing right now in the military is not only building bottom up with these communities, but we're trying to identify hubs of expertise in human performance optimization, whether it's nutrition, spiritual, behavioral, psychological, that can kind of feed these individual hubs with information. So they may build the program, but we keep them supplied with this hub and spoke concept. And this is where the military is trying to go right now, okay, with HPO and total force fitness. Finally, I want to give you one example of how this is being done, and this is in the special operations community right now. This again is the Chief of Staff, Milley, General Milley, with his Command Sergeant Major. And as I talked about early on, some of the key things with regards to moving initiatives like this at Hopkins, or moving initiatives like this in the military, it's all about the leaders. Okay, the leaders have to drive it. Maybe bottom up, but you need leader support for best practices. And that's what we're getting from the leadership. And of course, with leadership comes personnel, resources, money. Okay. One of the key things that we did in bottom up as well is we had a gap for about 20 years where we took fitness out of the hands of the enlisted, the sergeants, the corporals, the people who used to get out there and do all the education. We kind of took it away, and now we've brought it back. And we brought it back with a Master Fitness program so that the enlisted soldiers are the ones who are the educators, and they are implementing the programs from the doctrine. But this is a key concept, again, of bottom-up approach. Okay, they own and dominate human performance optimization, as you see here at the fitness program. Sports medicine is trying to make a difference. People like Dr. Schaefer, people like myself, in trying to implement this. But the key point that I'm going to make here is that it's all about a team. It's not just orthopedics or sports medicine or nutrition, whatever. It's the team approach, and that's what's being implemented right now in special operations. With this HPO, Total Force Fitness, there was a drive in the special operations community to enhance fitness, because this is obviously one of our most valuable resources. And the United States Army, USASOC, United States Army Special Operations Command, has adopted a program called Thor 3. Okay, Thor 3 is helped designed here by one of our colleagues in primary care sports medicine, Colonel Sean Kane. But Thor 3 stands for Tactical Human Optimization, Rapid Rehabilitation, and Reconditioning. What is it? Okay. Well, it's a comprehensive multidisciplinary approach to training with operators when they enter the community. And the mission is very simple. Increase combat effectiveness, again, that outcome I talked about, that translates to increased readiness for the warriors. So we have fewer and fewer people who are not ready to deploy. We take a look at the tactical human and optimization period. That translates, you see here from left to right, increased combat effectiveness. We're trying to increase physical, but also mental performance metrics. So this cognitive enhancement becomes key. And the Thor 3 part is rapid rehabilitation reconditioning. This is no longer sequential reconditioning. You see a primary care physician, get referred to physical therapy, have to wait for a while, maybe get to see an orthopedic surgeon in parallel. No, everything is integrated. It's a team. It's up front to make things happen quickly. So trying to decrease physical injuries and decrease that delta of return to duty time. It's a team, as I mentioned here. We've got a core staff here, and this is what you see in special operations right now. You got a coordinator who runs the group, strength and conditioning specialist, performance psychologist, performance dietitian, physical therapist, athletic trainer, okay, with physicians serving as consultants. This is the team that manages these HPO centers that I identified early on in that hub and spoke approach. These are typical gyms here. These are 4 different units here. It is state-of-the-art equipment to keep these people fit and ready to fight. So these are some integrated. This down in the bottom right is a 75th Ranger Regiment. But I can guarantee you the Ravens would have nothing on some of the equipment that some of our special operators are using. We've moved away from a 2-mile run and a sit-ups and push-ups to something like this, an operator readiness test. Everything is functional because it translates into a metric. Okay, you see here, climbing a ladder, scaling a wall, agility tests, step-ups, cover agility, high-low hurdles, things that translate into those skills that are needed on the battlefield. That becomes the metric that we're trying to improve with the program, ammo carry, etc. This is just one study done by primary care sports medicine, taking a look at the difference on those trained with Thor 3 versus those who have not trained with Thor 3 into their direct translation on the test that I just showed you, and there's marked differences that are statistically significant in terms of their improvement with these functional skills, not just a metric like a 2-mile run. We also are very involved, again, as I mentioned, in other metrics of that total force fitness. We're changing the way people eat. Okay, as you see here, a traditional eating pattern, we've gone now to kind of a green, yellow, red light, identifying performance foods. So that soldiers, warfighters can actually look and say, this is a low performance food, this is a high performance food, how it's going to impact them, but trying to make healthier choices. And with physical therapy here, again, we have now moved physical therapists forward so that they are right in line to assist with rehabilitating people. You see here the average Thor 3, if someone was injured, is less than a day that they're seen for an injury. At a traditional military treatment facility, it's 2 weeks before you get in with physical therapy. But this enables people to get in, get seen, and of course, decrease that delta so that we can keep people ready. So in summary here with Thor 3, you see an example of HPO and total force fitness in action. We're trying to emphasize this comprehensive multidisciplinary approach to try to increase readiness, okay, which really emphasizes, see that number one soft truth, special operations truth, that humans are more important than hardware. and the military is taking this seriously right now. So in summary, the nation and the DoD, as I had from the first part of my lecture, is pretty simple. We have comparable challenges in inactivity and obesity. We really reflect now what's coming to us from the pool in the country. These concepts, these paradigm shifts of HPO and TFF together, they form the strategy right now that we are trying to execute so that we can address national security and keep this resource active. It's driven by the line, okay, which is the generals, okay? It's optimized as bottom up, okay? They're built by the individual communities, okay? It's not top down. And I think most importantly, all these efforts require a team approach, integrated teams working together, interprofessional education, okay, that we're trying to maximize in the military so these teams can execute these things. And I just want to finish with one little story. I kind of took a shot at the Marine Corps there with one Marine that was overweight. And this is an interesting little story about who are the 1% who serve right now. This is me at the Marine Corps Marathon this year with this young man who, this is at the mile 22 mark. And I was asked by a nurse, hey, Dr. O'Connor, would you go over and see this kid? He's been vomiting. He's having a tough time. I said, sure. I go over and I see this kid, lay him down. We take about 20, 30 minutes in the tent, finally rehydrate him. He said, hey, doc, I got to get up. I got to go. I said, no, I'm sorry. You know, you were vomiting out of the course today. It's mile 22. We've already had a number of heat strokes today. You're not going to go. You just can't go. And we went back and forth for about 10 minutes. He said, doc, I really got to go. So I ended up making him sign out against medical advice. So if you're going to go, you're going to go with these risks. I said, but before you go, I'm going to get an iStat. I want to check your sodium and a few other things just in case. So I step away, get an iStat cooking, and I notice all these people are coming over to him to take a picture with him. I said, what are they doing, taking a picture with this guy? And he said, well, doc, don't you know that's Kyle Carpenter? I said, sure, I know he's Kyle Carpenter. I said, well, what's the big deal? He said, well, he's the youngest Marine ever to win the Medal of Honor. At the age of 20 in Afghanistan, he jumped on a grenade to save some Marine buddies. I'm saying, my God, you know, I'm just trying to have him sign out against medical advice to walk 3 miles, you know, and the kid jumped on a grenade. That's my claim to fame. But in any event, these are the kids who represent you. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions? Special Operations Forces. Not Soldier of Fortune, no. Special Operations Forces. Yeah, the question was, do I think there's a way for Thor 3 to be translated into the regular Army? It's all going to come down to resources. So Thor 3 is definitely showing proof of concept with some of these studies and making a difference. There are a lot of test projects right now integrating physical therapists, athletic trainers into these teams approach, but it's all about resources. And right now we're resource constrained. So, as you know, special operations will always get the best of the best, but this is where we need to go, flat out. But we're not there yet. Yes? Men, not buildings. Humans more important than hardware, flat out. Last question. Yeah, that's a great question in terms of internal load. And I know I was actually part of the Air Force Special Operations community trying to build their Thor 3. All sorts of interest in metrics. You know, we heard about the Fitbits and actigraphs, I guess they're called. And I know the Air Force is looking into that, internal loads, trying to measure fatigue. I guess that's what you're getting, on, and making it even more individualized. So that's coming at this point, and I know the Air Force is taking lead, especially in the PJ community, the pararescue. Okay. All right, thank you.